When I showed up in front of the guests at my birthday party with a black eye, everyone was stunned. The silence was absolute. Conversations died immediately. Glasses were suspended in mid-air. I could feel every pair of eyes fixed on my face, on the purple swelling surrounding my left eye, on the bruise that no amount of makeup could hide. Then my son, Mark, stepped forward and said in a clear, proud voice, "It was my wife who put her in her place so she could learn to respect." Chelsea, my daughter-in-law, straightened her shoulders beside him, satisfied, with that small, venomous smile gleaming on her lips. She looked at me as if I were trash, as if I were nothing. Then my brother, Ethan, walked up to Mark, and what he said changed everything. That day I lost my son, but I also found myself. Let me tell you how I got to that moment of public humiliation. How did I go from being a beloved mother to becoming the enemy in my own home? Because this didn't start with a punch. It started much earlier, with soft words and fake smiles, with poison disguised as concern. 3 years ago, when my husband passed away, the world lost its colour. Frank, my partner of 42 years, left silently one early winter morning. A massive heart attack. I didn't even have time to say goodbye. One morning he was next to me, warm under the sheets, and the next he was cold, gone, absent forever. The grief was so intense I thought I would drown. I would cry in the shower so Mark wouldn't hear me. I would cry while cooking. I would cry looking at the empty side of the bed. But I had to be strong. Mark needed me. He had lost his father too. The house where we lived was our fortress, a beautiful property that Frank had bought when Mark was just a boy. 2 stories, a sprawling yard, big windows that let in the morning sun. Frank had left it in my name in the will. "It's yours, Monica," he had told me months before he died, as if he had sensed something. "Don't let anyone take away what we built together." We signed the paperwork. Everything was in order. I was the legal owner of that house, of those memories, of every corner where I had raised my son. Mark was living with me. After his father's death, he decided to stay. "I'm not going to leave you alone, Mum," he would say while we had coffee in the mornings. He worked for a construction company, left early, and came back tired but always with a smile for me. We would eat dinner together. We would watch movies on Sundays. We talked about Frank, about the memories, about how much we missed him. The pain was more bearable shared. I would cook his favorite meals. He would fix things that broke around the house. We were a team. We were family. I thought it would always be this way. Then Chelsea arrived. He met her at a work conference. She was an event coordinator, elegant, self-assured, with that kind of polished beauty that looks straight out of a magazine. Dark hair, always perfectly styled. Impeccable nails, expensive clothes. The first time he brought her home, she smiled at me with sparkling white teeth and gave me a hug that felt calculated, measured to the millimeter. "Mrs. Monica, Mark talks about you so much," she said with a sweet voice. "It's a pleasure to meet the woman who raised such a wonderful man." I wanted to believe her. I wanted to think she was genuine. I cooked a special dinner that night. Roast chicken with the spices Mark loved. Fresh salad. Homemade biscuits still warm. Chelsea ate very little, moving the food around her plate while making comments about carbohydrates and calories. "I hardly ever eat bread," she said, looking at the biscuits with something akin to disdain. "You have to take care of yourself, right?" She smiled at me, but there was something sharp in that smile. Something that made me feel uneasy. Over the following months, Chelsea became a part of our lives. She came for dinner 2 or 3 times a week, always polite, always smiling. But I started to notice small things, the way she looked at the house, as if evaluating it, The comments that seemed innocent but carried hidden barbs. "This living room is so classic," she would say, touching the furniture Frank and I had chosen together. "I'd bet they are 30 years old, right? There are such modern styles now." Or when she saw the family photos on the wall. "It's nice that you keep so many memories of the past, Monica, although sometimes holding on so tightly to yesterday doesn't leave room for tomorrow." Mark didn't notice anything. He was in love, blind. When I tried to mention something, he defended her, but with a condescending smile. "Mum, Chelsea just wants to help. She's used to organizing spaces, it's her job." And I would keep silent. I didn't want to be that mother-in-law, that bitter woman who doesn't accept her son's partner. So I swallowed my doubts and smiled. They got married 6 months later. A small but elegant wedding. Chelsea organized everything. I barely participated. "Don't worry, Mrs. Monica," she would tell me. "I'll take care of it. You just relax and enjoy." On the wedding day, as I watched them exchange vows, I felt a knot in my stomach. I missed Frank. He would have known what to say. He would have seen what I was beginning to see. After the honeymoon, Chelsea moved into the house. "It's temporary, Mum," Mark explained to me, "just until we find our own place." I accepted. He was my son. I wasn't going to deny him a roof. But temporary turned into 1 month, then 2, then 6. And with each passing day, Chelsea occupied more space. She rearranged the kitchen. She changed the dining room curtains. She moved the living room furniture. "We just need to feel at home, Monica," she would tell me with that soft smile. And I let her do it, because I didn't want problems. But then the gatherings started. Chelsea would invite friends, colleagues, people I didn't know. They filled the living room, laughed loudly, and drank late into the night. And when I appeared, the atmosphere changed. Conversations stopped. They looked at me as if I were an intruder in my own house. "Mum, don't you want to rest?" Mark would say softly. "We'll take care of things here." And I would go up to my room, feeling displaced, invisible, surplus. Have you ever felt like a stranger in your own home? Have you watched someone take your space little by little and couldn't do anything to stop it? Tell me in the comments if you have lived through something like this. Because I was living a silent nightmare, and I didn't even know it. Months passed, and the house stopped being mine. Not legally, not on the deeds, but in every detail that mattered. Chelsea redecorated without asking permission. One day I came home, and the cream-coloured curtains Frank had chosen were gone. In their place hung grey, minimalist fabrics that made the living room feel cold, impersonal. "The other ones were just so dated, Monica," Chelsea explained to me as she folded the old curtains into a box. "These are more elegant, more current. You'll get used to them, you'll see." But I didn't want to get used to them. I wanted my curtains. I wanted my house. I wanted someone to ask me before changing the things Frank and I had built together. Mark was working more and more hours. He left before dawn and returned after 9 o'clock at night. We ate separately. I was in the kitchen. They were in the dining room with the door closed. I could hear their laughter, their private conversations, but I was no longer part of that. I was no longer part of my son's life. When I tried to talk to him, he was always tired, distracted, looking at his phone. "We'll talk later, Mum," he would say without looking up. "I have to check some emails right now," and I was left with the words stuck in my throat. Chelsea started making more direct comments. She no longer bothered to disguise her barbs with sweetness. One afternoon, while I was cooking, she walked into the kitchen and wrinkled her nose. "Monica, do you always cook with so much grease? The smell just permeates the entire house." She left a scented candle on the counter. "Use this afterward, please. My friends are coming over tomorrow and I don't want it to smell like old food." Old food. That's what she called the beef stew I was preparing, the same recipe Mark had loved his whole life. I started cooking less, retreating to my room more. The house felt hostile. Every space bore Chelsea's mark. Her magazines on the coffee table, her shoes by the entrance, her expensive perfume floating in the air. I was becoming invisible, a ghost in my own house. And the worst part was that Mark didn't see it, or didn't want to see it. One night I went downstairs for water. It was past 11 o'clock. I thought everyone was asleep. But I heard voices in the den. The door was ajar. I approached quietly. Chelsea was talking to Mark, her voice low but intense. "We can't keep going like this, sweetheart. This house is too big for 3 people. And your mother, she's getting older. Wouldn't it be better for her to live in a smaller place? More manageable for her? There are really nice assisted living residences with people her age. She'd have company. She'd be happy." My heart stopped. Mark was silent for a moment that felt eternal. Then he sighed. "I don't know, Chelsea. She's my mother. I can't just kick her out." Chelsea let out a soft laugh. "It's not about kicking her out, my love. It's about all of us having our space. Think about it. We could have this house to ourselves, start our family. Don't you want that?" I backed away before hearing Mark's answer. I went up the stairs with trembling legs. I locked myself in my room and cried silently, my face buried in the pillow so they wouldn't hear me. They wanted to kick me out. They wanted my house, the house that Frank had left me, the house where I had raised my son. And Mark was considering it. My own son was thinking about getting rid of me as if I were old furniture that no longer fit the new decor. The following days were tense. I couldn't look at Chelsea without feeling nauseous. She knew it. I could see it in her eyes, in the way she smiled at me with that quiet superiority. She knew I had heard. And she didn't care. In fact, she seemed to enjoy it. She started becoming more territorial. "Monica, could you knock before coming into the living room? Sometimes we're having private conversations." "Oh, Monica, try not to use the washing machine after 7 o'clock. The noise bothers us when we're watching television." The house had rules now. Rules I hadn't made. Rules that turned me into an unwelcome guest. I tried to talk to Mark. One morning I caught him before he left for work. "Son, I need to talk to you." He was checking his briefcase, rushed as always. "What's wrong, Mum?" I took a deep breath. "I feel like Chelsea and we aren't getting along. I feel like I'm no longer welcome here." Mark frowned. "Mum, don't say that. This is your house." But he said it automatically, without conviction, like someone repeating a learned phrase. "Then why do I feel like I have to ask permission for everything? Why do I feel like I'm in the way?" Mark ran a hand through his hair, uncomfortable. "It's just, Chelsea is used to having her space. It's nothing personal. Just try to be more flexible, okay? For me, please." And he left. He left me standing there, with the words of defense that never came. That night, Chelsea hosted another dinner party. 6 people arrived. They occupied the dining room, loud and cheerful. I was in the kitchen, making myself a cup of tea, when one of Chelsea's friends walked in. She looked at me in surprise. "Oh, hi. I didn't know anyone else was here." Before I could answer, Chelsea appeared behind her. "Ah, this is Monica, Mark's mother. She lives here." The way she said it. "She lives here." As if I were a squatter, as if it wasn't my house. The friend nodded politely and they left. I heard their laughter in the dining room. I stood in my own kitchen, feeling small, humiliated, invisible. Weeks passed. Chelsea started talking about renovations. "This kitchen is so old," she would tell Mark while I was right there, as if I couldn't hear her. "We should modernize it, change the cabinets, put an island in the center. Have you seen how much a property value goes up with a renovated kitchen? We could invest about $20,000 and get back double that if we ever sell." "Sell," she said, "sell," as if the house were hers, as if I didn't exist. Then my birthday arrived. 70 years. Mark suggested having a party. "You deserve to celebrate, Mum," he told me with a smile that reminded me of the boy he used to be. For a moment, I felt hope. Maybe things could get better. Maybe I still mattered. Chelsea took care of everything. She invited relatives, friends, neighbors. She decorated the living room with silver balloons and streamers. She set up a table with elegant hors d'oeuvres. On the outside, everything looked perfect. But I felt a strange tension in the air. Something wasn't right. The morning of my birthday, I went down for breakfast. Chelsea was in the kitchen talking on the phone. When she saw me, she abruptly cut the call short. "Good morning, Monica." Her tone was cold. I poured myself coffee in silence. She remained standing there, looking at me with an expression I couldn't decipher. "Do you know what day it is?" I asked, trying to break the ice. "Yes, your birthday." Silence. "And also, the day you should be making important decisions about your future." My hand stopped with the cup halfway to my mouth. "What do you mean?" Chelsea crossed her arms. "Mark and I have been talking. We need this house. Monica, we want to start a family. We need space, privacy. And you. You need a more appropriate place for your age." I felt the floor move beneath my feet. "This is my house, Chelsea." She smiled. That small, venomous smile. "For now." I didn't know how to respond. I went to my room with a racing heart. I sat on the edge of the bed, trembling. What was happening? How had I gotten here? I looked at the photos on my nightstand. Frank and I on our wedding day. Mark as a baby. Our happy family. And now everything was falling apart. That afternoon, I got ready for my own party, feeling an enormous weight on my chest. I put on the ivory-coloured dress I had bought especially for the occasion. I carefully put on makeup, trying to hide the dark circles, the marks of insomnia and distress. But when I looked in the mirror, I saw a tired woman, a woman who was losing the battle in her own house. I took a deep breath. I had to go downstairs. The guests would be arriving soon. I couldn't hide in my room on my birthday. I walked down the stairs slowly. The living room was transformed. Chelsea had done an impeccable job. Everything looked elegant, sophisticated, perfect. But it didn't feel like my party. It felt like someone else's event. The first guests started to arrive. My brother Ethan was among the first. He hugged me tightly and whispered in my ear, "Are you okay? You look pale." I forced a smile. "I'm fine, just a little tired." He looked at me with concern, but didn't insist. More people arrived. Cousins, old friends, neighbors. Everyone congratulated me, hugged me, wished me the best. For a moment, surrounded by people who loved me, I almost forgot the tension I was living under. Chelsea moved among the guests, like the perfect hostess. Smiling, charming, attentive. Mark was by her side, proud of his wife. I watched them from afar, feeling like I was observing someone else's life. My own party, and I was a spectator. Chelsea approached at one point, with 2 glasses of wine in her hands. She offered me one. "Happy birthday, Monica," she said, with that smile that no longer fooled me. I took the glass out of politeness. "Thank you for organizing all of this." She tilted her head. "It's the least I could do. After all, this house will soon be entirely ours, and we want to start off on the right foot." She said it in a low voice, just for me, while the others talked around us. It was a threat disguised as courtesy. I needed air. I excused myself and went up to the second floor. I went into the bathroom and closed the door. I leaned against the sink, breathing hard. I had to calm down. I couldn't ruin my own party with a panic attack. I splashed cold water on my wrists. I breathed deeply once, twice, 3 times. When I felt more stable, I left the bathroom. And then I saw her. Chelsea was in the hallway, in front of my bedroom door. She had my jewelry box in her hands. My jewelry box. The small wooden chest where I kept the few pieces of jewelry Frank had given me over the years. "What are you doing?" I asked, my voice trembling. Chelsea turned around, with no hint of guilt on her face. Just a look. "These pieces are very old, aren't they? I'm sure they're worth something." I walked toward her and snatched the jewelry box from her hands. "You have no right to touch my things." She laughed, a soft, scornful laugh. "Relax, Monica. I wasn't going to steal them. Although with what they're worth, they could help pay for part of the kitchen renovation." I felt the anger rising in my throat like lava. "Get out of my room." Chelsea took a step toward me. We were inches apart. "This isn't your room. This is our house. And the sooner you understand that, the better for everyone." Something broke inside me. All the accumulated humiliation, all the forced silence, all the invisibility I had endured for months suddenly exploded. This house is mine. It's in my name. Frank left it to me. And you have absolutely no right. The words came out with more force than I expected. Chelsea narrowed her eyes. Her face changed. The mask of politeness dropped, and I saw something ugly, something cruel underneath. "You're a ridiculous old woman clinging to the past. Mark doesn't need you anymore. I'm his family now, and we will get this house with or without your permission." I should have stayed quiet. I should have gone downstairs and forgotten the matter, but I couldn't. "Get out of my room right now, or I'm calling Mark." Chelsea let out a burst of laughter. "Call Pshike. Go ahead. He always believes me, always." And she was right. We both knew it. But I couldn't back down now. "Get out!" I pointed to the door. Chelsea looked at me with pure hatred. Then, without warning, she pushed me. It wasn't a hard push, but I didn't expect it. I lost my balance. My hip slammed against the edge of the dresser. I tried to grab onto something, but my hand slipped. I fell sideways. My head hit the corner of the nightstand. The pain was instant, sharp, blinding. I brought my hand to my eye and felt moisture. Blood. Chelsea just stood there, looking at me on the floor. For a second I saw something close to fear in her eyes, but she quickly composed herself. "You tripped on your own," she said firmly. "You're old and clumsy. You fell." She looked at me for a few more seconds and then walked out of the room, closing the door behind her. I stayed there, on the floor, touching my eye that was beginning to swell. The physical pain was nothing compared to the humiliation, the powerlessness, the horror of what had just happened. I don't know how long I was there. Maybe 5 minutes, maybe 10. I finally got up. I looked at myself in the mirror. The skin around my eye was already bruising. There was a small cut on my eyebrow. Blood had left a thin line down my cheek. I cleaned myself up with a towel. I tried to cover it with makeup, but it was useless. The bruise was too obvious. Downstairs, I could hear music, laughter, conversations. My party was going on as if nothing had happened. And I was up here, bleeding, bruised, broken. I thought about not going down, about staying locked up, about waiting for everyone to leave. But then I heard Mark's voice calling me. "Mom, come on, we're going to cut the cake." I couldn't hide. It was my birthday. I had to face what had happened. So I went down, slowly. Every step was an effort. When I reached the last step, the conversation stopped. One by one, the guests turned toward me. I saw their faces change. Surprise, horror, confusion. The silence fell like a lead weight. Mark was the first to speak, but not with concern, not with alarm. He stepped forward and said in a clear, almost proud voice, "It was my wife who put her in her place so she could learn to respect." The words fell like bombs in the middle of the silence. Chelsea straightened her shoulders beside him, satisfied. She looked at me with those cold eyes. Victorious. The guests were motionless. No one knew what to say. No one knew what to do. And I stood there, in front of everyone, humiliated in the most horrible way I could imagine. My own son justifying violence against me. My own son choosing her over me. Then Ethan pushed his way through the crowd. His face was red with fury. He walked straight up to Mark and looked at him with an intensity I had never seen before. What kind of man allows his wife to assault his mother and then celebrates it in front of everyone? He said in a low voice, charged with contempt. Mark paled. "Uncle, it's not what it looks like." Ethan cut him off. "Your father would be ashamed of you." The silence that followed was devastating. Mark opened his mouth, but no sound came out. Chelsea tried to grab his arm, but Ethan glared at her. "And you came into this family with lies. Everyone sees it." Some guests started whispering. Others looked at the floor, uncomfortable. A cousin approached me. "Monica, are you all right? We need to call someone." I shook my head. Tears were starting to blur my vision, but I wasn't going to cry. Not here. Not in front of them. Ethan took my arm gently. "Let's go upstairs. I'll clean that wound." But before I could move, Chelsea spoke. Her voice sounded shrill, desperate. "She provoked me. She insulted me. I was just defending myself." Ethan turned to her. "Liar." The word hung in the air. Mark finally reacted. He stepped between Ethan and Chelsea, protecting her as if she were the victim. "Uncle, that's enough. You don't know what happened." Ethan let out a bitter laugh. "I don't know. I look at your mother with a black eye, and you defending the person who hit her. I know exactly what happened here." More guests began to leave. Some said goodbye awkwardly. Others simply left without saying anything. The party was falling apart. My birthday had become a public nightmare. An elderly woman, a friend of my late husband, approached before leaving. She took my hand and whispered, "Frank would never have allowed this. Take care of yourself, Monica." And she left, leaving me with those words stuck in my heart. Ethan led me to the kitchen. He closed the door. He sat me down in a chair and began to check my eye carefully. "This needs ice," he said as he opened the freezer. He wrapped ice cubes in a clean cloth and pressed it gently against my face. The cold made me wince, but the pain started to subside a little. "How did it happen?" Ethan asked in a controlled voice, although I could see the contained fury in his eyes. I told him everything. The jewelry box, the argument, the push, the fall. As I spoke, I watched his jaw tighten more and more. "This can't go on," he said when I finished. "This house is yours, legally yours. She has no rights." I wiped away the tears that had started to fall without permission. But Mark, he's on her side. He didn't even ask if I was okay. He only defended her. Ethan clenched his fists. Mark is blinded, but he's going to wake up. And when he does, he's going to regret it. I wanted to believe him. I wanted to think that my son would go back to being the man I had raised. But something inside me had broken that night, something that might never be repaired. The kitchen door burst open. Mark walked in, with Chelsea close on his heels. "Mum, we need to talk," he said in a serious tone. Ethan stood up, interposing himself. "Don't you go near her." Mark looked at him with frustration. "She's my mother. I have the right to talk to her." Ethan didn't move. "You lost that right when you let your wife hit her and humiliate her in front of everyone." Chelsea intervened, her voice sharp and defensive. "It was an accident. She tripped. I didn't touch her." I looked at her. There she was, lying brazenly, without a shred of remorse on her face. "You pushed me," I said in a trembling but firm voice. "You pushed me and I fell. And then you left me lying on the floor like I was trash." Chelsea shook her head, fake tears beginning to form in her eyes. "Mark, she's lying. She's trying to separate us. She's jealous of what we have." It was incredible. She was flipping the script, playing the victim. And Mark looked at her with concern, as if he truly believed she was the one who needed protection. "Monica has always been difficult," Chelsea continued in a choked voice. "From the day she met me, she's treated me badly. She's made me feel like I don't belong here. I just want peace. I want us to be a family." Every word was a stab. She was building a narrative where I was the villain and she was the innocent victim, and Mark was buying all of it. "Mum," he said, turning toward me, Maybe you need to rest. You're stressed, confused." Confused. He was calling me confused, as if I were crazy, as if I had made the whole thing up. Ethan exploded. "Are you listening to yourself, Mark? Your mother has a black eye, and you're trying to convince her that she's confused." Mark ran his hands over his hair, overwhelmed. "I don't know what to believe. I wasn't there. I didn't see what happened." Chelsea clung to his arm, sobbing against his shoulder. "She hates me, Mark. She's never accepted me. Now she's making things up so you'll kick me out of the house." It was a masterful performance, and it was working. I got up from the chair. The ice fell to the floor. I looked my son directly in the eyes. "Mark, I am your mother. I raised you alone after your father died. I gave you everything I had. I loved you unconditionally. And now you are calling me a liar to protect a woman who hit me." My voice broke on the last word. Mark looked away. He couldn't hold my gaze. And at that moment, I knew I had lost him. Maybe not forever, but certainly in that instant. Chelsea had won. "I want you both to leave," I said with all the dignity I could muster. "This is my house. I want you to pack your things and go." Chelsea stopped crying instantly. Her face hardened. "This house is too big for you alone. You need help. You need supervision." The word supervision sounded like poison. Ethan stepped forward. "The only one who needs to leave is you. Monica is the legal owner of this property. You can leave voluntarily, or we can call the police and have you forcibly removed." Mark finally spoke, and his words crushed me. "We're not leaving. This house should be mine. My father built it for our family, for me. It's not fair that Mum gets everything when I need to start my own family." There it was. The truth. He didn't care about my well-being. He didn't care that I had been hit. He cared about the house, the property, the money. Chelsea had planted that idea in his head, and now he was repeating it as if it were his own. "Your father left this house to me because he trusted me to take care of it." I said, my voice trembling, because he knew it was my refuge, my security, and you want to take it away from me. Mark didn't answer. Chelsea did. You need to be realistic, Monica. You're old. How many more years are you going to live here? 10, maybe 15 if you're lucky. We're young. We need this space now. We can take care of you somewhere else. A more appropriate place. Every word was calculated, cold, ruthless. Ethan pulled out his phone. I'm calling the police right now. Mark turned pale. Uncle, don't do this. I'm your nephew. Ethan looked at him with deep disappointment. And she is my sister, and you are destroying her for a woman who only wants your money. Chelsea laughed. My money? Mark doesn't have any money. Everything is in her name. She pointed to me with contempt. That's why we're here. That's why we need her to understand that she's no longer in this alone. The kitchen door opened again. It was Attorney Frank, the family lawyer. He had been a close friend of my husband and had drafted his will. Apparently, someone had called him during the chaos of the party. He walked in with his briefcase in hand, looking at the scene with seriousness. Good evening. I heard there was some trouble here. His presence immediately changed the atmosphere. Chelsea tensed up. Mark looked confused. Ethan sighed with relief. Frank, it's good you're here, Ethan said. We need to clear up some things about the ownership of this house. The lawyer nodded. He opened his briefcase and took out a folder. I happened to bring the documents. I thought we might need them. He looked at Mark and Chelsea. I believe there is some confusion about the legal situation of this property. Chelsea straightened her back, trying to regain her composure. There's no confusion. We all know the house is in Monica's name, but Mark is her son, her only heir. It will eventually be his. Attorney Frank looked at her with a neutral expression, but his eyes were sharp. That's not exactly correct. He opened the folder and pulled out several documents. The will of Monica's late husband has certain specific clauses. My heart began to beat faster. Clauses? Frank had never mentioned anything like that to me. The lawyer continued. The house was left to Monica with absolute ownership, but there is a protection clause. Mark frowned. What does that mean? Attorney Frank looked at me briefly, as if asking for permission. I nodded. I needed to know. Everyone needed to know. It means that if Monica is pressured, coerced, or forced to leave the property by any family member, the house does not pass into the hands of direct heirs. Instead, it will be donated entirely to a charitable institution specified in the will. The silence that followed was absolute. Chelsea turned pale. Mark opened his mouth, but no sound came out. The lawyer's words hung in the air like a sentence. Chelsea was the first to react. That's ridiculous. It can't be legal. Attorney Frank looked at her with professional calm. It is completely legal. Mr. Frank made his intentions very clear. He wanted to protect his wife from any kind of family pressure after his death. He pulled another document from the folder. Here is the exact clause. If Monica is forced to sell, donate, or abandon the property under coercion of any kind, the house automatically goes to the St. Gabriel's Elderly Foundation. Mark would inherit absolutely nothing. Mark collapsed into a chair. His face had lost all colour. Dad did that. It wasn't a question. It was a statement full of shock. Attorney Frank nodded. Your father was a wise man. He had seen many cases of families destroyed by inheritance disputes. He wanted to ensure that Monica had a safe place until the end of her days, without pressure, without manipulation. He looked directly at Chelsea when he said the last word. She clenched her fists. Her mask of sweetness was completely destroyed now. Only raw anger remained on her face. "So all this time," Ethan said, looking at Chelsea with scorn, "all this planning to kick my sister out of her home, all the humiliation, the contempt, the push today, it was all for nothing, because you were never going to get this house." Chelsea stepped back as if she had been slapped. I didn't have any plan." But her voice sounded hollow. We all knew the truth now. Everything was clear. The renovations she wanted to do, the comments about the property's value, the conversations I had overheard about assisted living residences. It had all been a calculated strategy to push me out of my own home. Mark slowly got up. He looked at me. He truly looked at me for the first time in months. I saw confusion in his eyes. I saw shame beginning to appear. "Mum, I didn't know." His voice was barely a whisper. "I didn't know anything about that clause." I looked at him, feeling a deep pain in my chest. "But you knew I was feeling bad. You knew I felt displaced in my own home. And you did nothing. You chose to believe her instead of me." Mark opened his mouth to reply, but the words didn't come. What could he say? It was true. All of it was true. Chelsea changed tactics, her eyes filled with tears again. "Mark, honey, you have to believe me. I didn't know anything about this. I just wanted us to have our own space. I wanted us to be happy." She clung to his arm desperately. "Don't leave me. Please. We're in this together." But Mark pulled away from her grasp. Something had shifted in his expression. The fog was beginning to lift. "How long have you been planning this?" he asked in a dangerously low voice. Chelsea shook her head. "I didn't plan anything. You're misunderstanding everything." Attorney Frank intervened again. "There's something else you should know." He took out another document. 3 weeks ago, someone requested a professional valuation of this property. The appraiser contacted the office because they noticed the name on the request did not match the registered owner. He looked at Chelsea. The request was made by Chelsea Mendez. She paid $500 for a full appraisal of the house, including future value projections if certain renovations were made. The silence was deafening. Mark looked at his wife as if she were a stranger. "Also," Attorney Frank continued, "we received a consultation 2 weeks ago asking about the legal procedures to declare an elderly person incompetent to manage their own assets." My heart stopped. Incompetent? Had they tried to declare me incompetent? The consultation came from the same phone number registered to Chelsea Mendez. Attorney Frank closed the folder. "We did not proceed with any information, of course, but it was logged." Chelsea backed up until she was against the wall. "That's a lie. You're making all this up to turn him against me." Mark turned to her with fury in his eyes. "You tried to declare my mother incompetent. You tried to take her house using the law." Chelsea was sobbing now, but they were tears of panic, not sadness. I was just investigating options. I wasn't going to do anything. I just wanted to know what was possible." Mark ran his hands over his face. "My God, what have I done? What did you turn me into?" He looked at her with horror, as if he could finally see what we had all seen from the beginning. Ethan put a hand on my shoulder. "Monica, do you want them to leave tonight?" I looked at Mark. My son, the boy I had raised, the man he had become, and whom I no longer recognized. Part of me wanted to yell at him. I wanted to kick him out of the house immediately. But another part, the part that had been a mother for so long, still felt love for him. A hurt, broken love, but love nonetheless. "Mark can stay tonight," I said in a tired voice. But she leaves. Now. Chelsea's eyes widened in shock. You can't do this. I'm his wife. I looked directly at her. This is my house, and I want you out of it. Mark did not defend her this time. He remained silent, looking at the floor. Chelsea looked at him, expecting him to say something, to protect her as he always had. But he didn't move. Reality had finally hit him. Attorney Frank spoke in a professional tone. Mrs. Chelsea, I suggest you pack your personal belongings and leave. If you refuse, I can call the authorities. Chelsea looked at all of us with pure hatred. There were no more tears, only rage. This isn't over, she said in a venomous voice. I have rights. I'm Mark's wife. This house will eventually be mine too. Ethan took a step toward her. Didn't you listen to anything the lawyer said? This house will never be yours. Never. And if you keep pushing, if you keep trying to kick Monica out, the house will go to charity and neither you nor Mark will see a single cent. Chelsea gritted her teeth. She looked at Mark one last time. Are you going to let them kick me out like this? Are you going to choose her over me? Mark looked up. His eyes were red. I think you already chose a long time ago. You chose this house over me, over us. His voice sounded broken. Chelsea let out a bitter laugh. You're an idiot, a weak idiot who's never going to leave his mummy's apron strings. She grabbed her purse, which she had left in the kitchen, and stormed out, slamming the door. The sound echoed throughout the house. We remained in silence for a long moment. Mark was still standing there, motionless, as if he couldn't process what had just happened. Finally, he spoke, his voice barely audible. Mum, I'm sorry. I am so sorry. Tears began to roll down his cheeks. I don't know how I let things get this far. I don't know when I stopped seeing you. I wanted to hug him. I wanted to tell him everything was okay. But I couldn't, because it wasn't okay. Nothing was okay. She pushed me, Mark. Your wife pushed me and left me bleeding on the floor. And you defended her, in front of everyone, on my birthday. My voice broke. Do you have any idea how that felt? Mark covered his face with his hands. His shoulders were trembling. I know. And I have no excuse. She would say things. She made me feel like you were the problem, that you were the one who wouldn't accept her. And I believed her. God, I believed all of it. Attorney Frank put the documents back in his briefcase. Monica, if you need a restraining order against Chelsea, I can help you with that. I shook my head. I just wanted it all to end. I just wanted peace. For now, I just want her to leave and not come back. The lawyer nodded. Understood. But if she contacts you, if she threatens you in any way, call me immediately. He gave me his business card, even though I already had his number. I'm going to stay available just in case. He said goodbye and left, leaving the three of us in the kitchen. Ethan broke the silence. Mark, you need to decide what you're going to do. But whatever it is, your mother can't keep living with this tension. Mark nodded without looking up. I know. I need to think. I need to process all of this. He looked at his left hand, where his wedding ring was shining. He slowly took it off and placed it on the counter. The sound of the metal against the wood sounded final. I'm done. That night I couldn't sleep. I stayed awake in my room, with the door locked for the first time in years. My eye was throbbing. The swelling had worsened, and the bruise extended to my cheek. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw the scene repeat itself. The push, the fall. Chelsea's face looking at me on the floor without remorse. And worse still, I saw Mark defending her in front of everyone. Those words echoed in my head over and over. It was my wife who put her in her place, my own son, my boy. How had it come to this point? I heard movement in the house throughout the night. Footsteps coming and going, doors opening and closing, muffled voices. I didn't know if Mark was still here or if he had gone with Chelsea. Part of me wanted to know. Another part was afraid of the answer. Ethan had stayed in the guest room. He had told me he wouldn't leave me alone tonight, that he would stay until he was sure I was okay. His presence gave me some comfort, but it couldn't erase the pain I felt in my chest. A pain that had nothing to do with the physical blow. When dawn finally broke, I walked down the stairs carefully. The house was silent. The remains of the party were still everywhere. Deflated balloons on the floor, abandoned glasses on the tables, plates with half-eaten food. Everything looked shaky, sad under the grey light of the morning. I walked over to the living room window. Mark's car was still in the driveway. He was still here. I didn't know if that relieved me or made me more anxious. Ethan appeared at the kitchen doorway. He brought 2 cups of coffee. He offered me one. "You didn't sleep at all," he said. It wasn't a question. The dark circles must have been obvious. I couldn't. I took the cup gratefully. The coffee was hot and strong, exactly how I needed it. We sat in silence for a moment. Then Ethan spoke. "Attorney Frank called me an hour ago. Chelsea tried to contact him last night." He paused. "She wants to negotiate." I looked up, surprised. "Negotiate what?" Ethan grimaced. "She wants money. She says if he pays her a certain amount, she'll sign the divorce without a fuss and leave without causing a scandal. If not, she threatens to take this to the media. She says she'll tell everyone the family is kicking her out onto the street." I felt nauseous. Of course she wanted money. Everything had always been about money. "How much is she asking for?" Ethan hesitated. $50,000. The figure hit me like a punch. $50,000. It was an enormous amount. Money I didn't have readily available in cash. I would have to sell investments, maybe take out a loan against the house. "I'm not going to pay her anything," I said firmly. "She assaulted me. She tried to manipulate my son into stealing my house. She doesn't deserve a cent." Ethan nodded in approval. "That's exactly what I told Frank. He agrees. He says her threats are empty. She doesn't have a legal case." We heard footsteps on the stairs. Mark appeared. He looked terrible. Swollen eyes, wrinkled clothes, messy hair. He had probably slept as little as I had. He looked at both of us cautiously. "Good morning," he said in a husky voice. Ethan didn't reply. I just nodded. Mark poured himself coffee with trembling hands. The silence was heavy, awkward. Finally he spoke. "Chelsea left last night for a hotel. She's been sending me messages all night." He paused. "She wants us to talk, to fix things." Ethan let out a snort. "Fix things? After everything she did?" Mark slumped into a chair. "I know it sounds ridiculous, but she's my wife. We've been together for 2 years. I can't just end everything like this." I looked at him in disbelief. "Mark, she tried to declare me incompetent. She investigated how to take my house. She hit me and left me bleeding. And you want to fix things with her?" My voice volume rose. "What else does she have to do for you to open your eyes?" Mark rubbed his face with his hands. "You're right. I know. But it's complicated. I love her. Or I loved her. I don't know anymore." His voice broke. Everything is so confusing. I thought I knew her. I thought we were happy. And now I find out that everything was a lie. That she only wanted the house. That I was just a means to get what she wanted. Tears began to roll down his cheeks again. I feel so idiotic, so used. Part of me wanted to comfort him. He was my son, after all. But the wound was too fresh, the pain too deep. Mark, she didn't just use you. She destroyed me too. She turned my house into a place where I felt like a stranger. She made me feel like I was in the way. She humiliated me in front of everyone. And you let her do it. You participated in that. Mark nodded miserably. I know, and I'm never going to be able to forgive myself for it. He looked up at me. His eyes were red and swollen. Will you ever be able to forgive me? I didn't know how to answer. Could I forgive him? A mother's love doesn't just disappear, but the trust was broken. The respect was damaged. I don't know, Mark. I need time. I need space. I need to heal. My voice sounded tired. And you need to decide what kind of man you want to be. Because the man who defended his wife after she hit his mother is not the son I raised. Ethan stood up. I'm going to be direct. Mark, you need to leave this house for a while. Your mother needs peace. She needs to feel safe in her own home. And right now, your presence only brings her pain. Mark turned pale. You want me to leave? My childhood home? Ethan didn't flinch. This is not your house. It is your mother's house. And after what happened yesterday, she has every right to ask you to leave. Mark looked at me, hoping I would contradict Ethan, hoping I would say he could stay. But I didn't. Ethan was right. I needed him to leave. I needed to breathe without feeling the constant tension. I needed my space back. I think it's for the best, I finally said. For now, until things calm down. Mark closed his eyes as if he had been struck. Okay, he whispered. I understand. He stood up slowly. I'm going to pack a few things. I watched him go up the stairs. His shoulders were slumped. He looked defeated. And although part of me felt compassion, the other part, the hurt and betrayed part, only felt relief that he would soon be gone. Ethan put his hand over mine. You did the right thing. I nodded, even though I wasn't sure of anything. Nothing felt right at that moment. Half an hour later, Mark came down with 2 suitcases. He stopped at the entrance of the living room where I was still sitting. I'm going to stay with a friend for a few days, until I find an apartment. He paused. Mum, I know this doesn't fix anything, but I need you to know that I'm sorry. I truly am sorry. I was a coward, a bad son, and I'm going to have to live with that for the rest of my life. His voice cracked. I love you. I've always loved you. And I'm so sorry I failed you. I stood up. I walked toward him. For a moment, we just looked at each other. Then I did something I hadn't planned. I hugged him. It was a brief, tense hug, full of pain, but it was the only thing I could offer him at that moment. I love you too, I whispered. That's why this hurts so much. We separated. Mark took his suitcases and walked out the door. I heard his car start. I heard the sound fading away down the street. And then silence filled the house. I sank onto the sofa. The tears I had been holding back finally came out. I cried for my son, for the relationship we had lost, for the broken trust, for the pain of watching someone you love choose another person over you again and again. Ethan sat down beside me and held me while I cried. He didn't say anything. He was just there. Sometimes that's all you need. Someone who is present in your pain without trying to fix it. Have you had to put distance between yourself and someone you love to protect yourself? Have you felt that pain of choosing your well-being over a relationship that was destroying you? Sometimes love is not enough. Sometimes loving someone means letting them go, even if it hurts, even if it feels like tearing a piece out of your heart. The following days passed in a strange haze. The house was silent in a way I had never experienced before. It wasn't the peaceful silence of being alone. It was the heavy silence of absence, of things left unsaid, of broken relationships. I looked at myself in the mirror every morning and saw the bruise changing color, from dark purple to greenish yellow. It was a constant reminder of everything that had happened, a map of pain painted on my face. Ethan stayed with me for that first week. He cooked when I didn't have the energy. He answered the phone when I didn't want to talk to anyone. Several people called after the party, some with genuine concern, others with morbid curiosity disguised as caring. "Is it true what happened, Monica? Did your daughter-in-law really hit you? Did Mark really defend her?" Ethan sent them all away with curt replies. "My sister needs privacy. Thank you for calling." And he would hang up without giving any further explanation. Mark sent messages every day. At first they were long, full of apologies, full of explanations about how Chelsea had manipulated him, about how he now saw everything clearly, about how he wanted to fix things. I read them but didn't respond. I didn't know what to say. The words felt empty. The apologies came too late. The damage was already done. As the days passed, the messages became shorter, more desperate. "Mum, please talk to me. I just want to know you're okay. I miss you." But I kept silent. I needed silence. I needed space to process everything I had lived through. One afternoon, Attorney Frank came to visit me. He brought news. "Chelsea has hired a lawyer," he said as we had tea in the living room. "She's initiating divorce proceedings." I felt a strange mix of relief and sadness. Relief because it meant she would leave our lives. Sadness because it meant Mark's marriage had ended in disaster. "What is she asking for?" I asked. Attorney Frank grimaced. "She's asking for compensation for the 2 years of marriage. She alleges she quit her job to support Mark, that she deserves a share of the marital assets." "But Mark doesn't have assets," I said, confused. "Everything he has is in my name. The house, the investments, everything." Attorney Frank nodded. "Exactly. That's why her lawyer is trying to argue that Mark is entitled to an anticipated inheritance, that you should give him a portion of your estate so he can meet the divorce obligations." I was speechless. Even now, even after everything, Chelsea was still trying to get at my money. But now she was using Mark as a legal intermediary. "That won't work, will it?" I asked in a trembling voice. Attorney Frank shook his head firmly. "Absolutely not. There is no such thing as mandatory anticipated inheritance. You decide what to do with your estate and when. No one can force you to give anything, and especially not in these circumstances." I breathed a sigh of relief. "Does Mark know what she's doing?" Attorney Frank shrugged. "I'm not sure, but he should know. It's his divorce after all." That night I sent Mark a message, the first one in a week. "Do you know that Chelsea is asking me to give you money to pay her?" The response came almost immediately. "What?" No, I didn't know anything about that. Then another message. "Mum, I swear I didn't ask you for anything. I don't want your money. I just want to fix things between us." I wanted to believe him. I wanted to think that Mark wasn't part of this plan. But the trust was so damaged that I no longer knew what to believe. 2 more weeks passed. The bruise finally disappeared from my face, but the wound in my heart kept bleeding. Ethan had to return to his job, to his life. He hugged me before leaving. "You're going to be fine," he said. "You are stronger than you think." I nodded, even though I didn't feel strong. I felt broken. I felt old. I felt alone. The house felt even emptier after he left. One afternoon, the doorbell rang. I wasn't expecting anyone. I looked through the peephole and saw a young woman I didn't recognize. I opened the door cautiously. "Mrs. Monica?" she asked with a kind smile. I nodded. "I'm a private investigator. I was hired by your son's lawyer." My heart sped up. Mark had hired an investigator. For what? "I've been looking into Chelsea Mendez's financial past," the woman continued, "and I found information I think you should know." I invited her in. We sat in the living room. She opened a folder full of documents. "Chelsea has a history of relationships with older or widowed men with property. Her previous marriage ended when the husband's family discovered she was falsifying documents to transfer properties into her name." A shiver ran down my spine. "Does Mark know this?" The investigator nodded. "He was the one who hired me. When he started to suspect, he wanted to know the truth. And the truth is that Chelsea is a professional swindler. She has gambling debts of over $80,000. Illegal lenders are looking for her. That's why she needed this house so desperately." Everything started to make sense. The haste to get married, the insistence on moving into the house, the constant comments about the property's value, the investigations into declaring me incompetent. It wasn't just ambition, it was desperation. She was running from her debts and saw in Mark, in me, in our house, a way out. "There's more," the investigator said. "She was in contact with real estate agents 3 months before your birthday incident. She asked them how long it would take to sell a property after the owner was declared unfit to make decisions. She had a detailed plan." I covered my mouth with my hand. The horror of what could have happened hit me like a wave. If I had been weaker, if I hadn't had Ethan, if Attorney Frank hadn't arrived that night with the documents, Chelsea could have succeeded. She could have taken everything from me: my house, my dignity, my freedom. "Mark saw all this?" I asked. The investigator nodded. "Yes, and he was devastated. That's why he's proceeding with the divorce without any resistance. He wants her out of his life as quickly as possible." After the investigator left, I sat in silence for a long time, processing everything I had heard. Chelsea was worse than I had imagined. She wasn't just an ambitious or manipulative woman. She was a criminal, a predator who sought out vulnerable victims. And she almost succeeded. She almost destroyed my life. She almost destroyed my son. The phone rang. It was Mark. I hesitated before answering. Finally, I did. "Hello, Mum." His voice sounded tired. "The investigator went to see you." "Yes," I confirmed. There was a long silence. "Now you understand why I feel so stupid, so used. I married a con artist, and I didn't see the signs." "She was good at what she did," I said softly. "She fooled both of us." Mark sighed. "But you saw it before I did. You tried to warn me and I didn't listen to you. I treated you horribly to defend her. And now I have to live with that." His voice broke. "Will you ever be able to forgive me?" The question hung between us. I closed my eyes. I thought about all the pain, the humiliation, the betrayal. But I also thought about the good years, about the boy I had raised, about the man he could be again if he learned from this. "I don't know if I can forgive you right now," I said honestly. "But I want to try. With time, with space, with therapy, maybe. I heard Mark exhale as if he had been holding his breath. I want to try too, Mum. I want to get our relationship back. I want to be the son I deserve to be. The son Dad would have wanted me to be. Tears began to roll down my cheeks. Your father would be disappointed in what happened, I said. But he would also believe in second chances. He always believed in them. We talked a little more, cautiously, carefully, like two people who met a long time ago and were trying to recognize each other again. When we hung up, I felt strangely light. It wasn't complete forgiveness. It wasn't total reconciliation. But it was a beginning, a small crack in the wall that had been built between us. And for now, that was enough. The following months were about slow healing, like when you break a bone and have to wait patiently for it to mend, knowing it might never be exactly as it was before. Mark and I saw each other once a week, always in public places, a coffee shop, a park, places where we both felt safe. The first meetings were awkward, long pauses between words, eyes that wouldn't hold a gaze. But little by little, very slowly, we began to find something akin to what we had lost. Mark started therapy. He told me about it one afternoon while we were having coffee. The therapist says I was a victim of psychological abuse, he said, looking at his cup. That Chelsea used classic manipulation techniques, isolation, gaslighting, gradual control. He paused. But that doesn't excuse me, Mum. I made choices too. I chose to believe her over you. I chose to ignore the signs. And that's something I have to carry. I nodded. He was right. Being a victim didn't erase the consequences of his actions. The divorce process was long and ugly. Chelsea fought every point. She demanded compensation for time invested. She demanded emotional damages. She even demanded the clothes Mark had bought her. Her lawyer sent letter after letter, threat after threat. But Attorney Frank was relentless. He presented all the investigators' evidence, the documents about her debts, the records of her searches about how to declare people incompetent, her previous marriages and patterns of fraud. Eventually, Chelsea's lawyer advised her to accept a quick and clean settlement or face criminal charges. One afternoon, Attorney Frank called me with news. Chelsea agreed. The divorce is final. She receives nothing except her personal belongings, and there is a permanent restraining order. She cannot come within 200 yards of either Mark or you. I felt an enormous weight lift from my shoulders. She was gone. She was truly gone. Where is she now? I asked. Attorney Frank hesitated. As I understand it, she left the state, probably running from her creditors. But that's no longer our problem. Mark moved into a small apartment. He invited me to see it one Saturday. It was modest. A single bedroom, basic furniture, nothing luxurious. But it looked clean, tidy. There were family photos on the walls, photos from when he was a child, photos with Frank, photos with me before everything fell apart. I'm starting over, he told me as he made tea. Without pretenses, without living beyond my means. Just me, working, healing. He showed me his space with a certain shy pride. He was a different man from the one who had defended Chelsea that horrible night. But the real test came months later. It was a quiet Sunday. Mark came to visit me at the house for the first time since he had left. He walked through the rooms slowly, touching the walls, looking at the photos, remembering. When we reached the kitchen, he stopped. "This is where everything blew up," he said softly. "This is where Uncle Ethan told me Dad would be ashamed of me." His eyes filled with tears. And he was right. Dad would be ashamed. I am ashamed. We sat down at the table. the same table where we had shared thousands of meals. "Mum, I need to tell you something," Mark began, "and I need you to listen until the end." I nodded. He took a deep breath. "I've been working with the therapist on responsibility, on not hiding behind excuses, and I realized something." He paused. "Chelsea manipulated me, yes, but I let her do it because, deep down, a part of me wanted this house. I wanted what Dad built, and that made it easier for her to manipulate me." I stayed quiet, letting him continue. "When she suggested things about you being difficult or dated, I didn't stop her because a small, selfish part of me thought that if you left, the house would be mine. Not consciously, not actively, but the seed was there." Tears were rolling down his cheeks now. "And that's why I'm just as guilty as her, because my ambition, my greed, allowed all of this to happen." It was painful to hear, but it was also necessary. It was the raw truth we had been avoiding. "I appreciate your honesty," I said finally. "And you're right. Chelsea couldn't have manipulated you if she hadn't found something in you to latch onto." Mark nodded miserably. "I know. And that's why I don't expect you to forgive me completely. I don't expect things to go back to how they were. I just hope to be able to show you, with time, that I'm better than my worst decisions." I extended my hand across the table. He took it. "Mark, your father and I raised you to be a good man, and good men make mistakes. Big mistakes sometimes. But they also learn. They also grow. They also redeem themselves." I squeezed his hand. "I'm not going to lie and say everything is okay, because it's not. But I'm willing to walk with you while you work on being better. That's all I can offer you right now." Mark sobbed. He stood up and hugged me. A long hug. A hug that asked for forgiveness without words. I hugged him back. My boy. My broken son trying to put himself back together. "I love you, Mum," he whispered. "I'm so sorry. I'm sorry for everything." I cried with him. For everything we had lost. For everything we could still recover. For the long road we still had ahead of us. After that day, something changed between us. It was as if we had finally cleaned the wound. It hurt. It stung. But now it could really start to heal. Mark started coming over more often. Not too much. He didn't try to force things. But every week, every month, we rebuilt a little more of the bridge between us. We occasionally ate dinner together. He would fix things that broke in the house. I would cook his favorite meals as before. One day he told me he had met someone, a woman from his job. "She's different from Chelsea in every way," he told me with a shy smile. "She's honest, transparent. She has her own apartment, her own car, her own life. She doesn't need anything from me except company." He paused. "And this time I'm taking it slow. This time I'm paying attention to the signs. This time I'll listen to you if you see something I don't." I smiled. "I'd like to meet her. When you're ready. No pressure." Months turned into a year, then into 2. The anniversary of that horrible birthday party came and went. This time we celebrated just Mark, Ethan, and me. Something small, intimate, quiet. I blew out the candles on my cake and Mark hugged me. "Happy birthday, Mum. I love you." And this time when he said those words, I felt them to be true. I felt them to be real. I felt them to be earned. Have you had to rebuild a relationship after a deep betrayal? Have you learned that forgiving doesn't mean forgetting, but choosing to move forward despite the pain? Sometimes healing is not fast. It's not easy. It doesn't erase the scars. But it is possible. With time, with honesty, with hard work from both sides. And sometimes, just sometimes, what is broken can be put back together in a different but equally valuable way. The house was still mine, my refuge, my fortress. But it no longer felt like a prison of painful memories. It felt like a home again, a place where I had survived the storm, a place where I had found my strength when I thought I had none left. The old curtains Frank had chosen were hung back up in the windows. The furniture that Chelsea had moved was returned to its original place. Every corner was mine again. And although the pain of what had happened never completely disappeared, I learned something important. I learned that protecting myself didn't make me selfish. I learned that setting boundaries didn't make me cruel. I learned that sometimes the greatest love you can give is refusing to be destroyed, even if that means temporarily letting go of the one you love. Because only by remaining whole can you be there when they are finally ready to rebuild. 2 years after that horrible night, I was in my yard pruning the roses Frank had planted decades ago. The morning sun was warm on my back. The flowers had bloomed spectacularly this season. Red, yellow, peach-coloured, each one more beautiful than the last. There was something therapeutic about caring for these plants, in seeing how something that looked dead in winter could be reborn with such strength in spring. I heard a car stop in front of the house. It was Mark. But he didn't come alone. A woman got out of the passenger side. Beatrice. I had met her 6 months earlier at a casual dinner. She was an elementary school teacher. She had a genuine smile and kind eyes. And most importantly, she treated Mark as an equal. She didn't flatter him. She didn't manipulate him. She simply accompanied him in his life in a healthy and balanced way. "Hi, Mum," Mark greeted me with a kiss on the cheek. Beatrice hugged me with warmth. "Mrs. Monica, the roses look beautiful." I smiled at her. "Thank you, dear. Your help last month made a difference." We went in for lunch. I had prepared a simple meal, pot roast with mashed potatoes and fresh salad. We sat down at the table, the same table where so many things had happened. But now the bad memories were being replaced by new ones, better ones. We ate, chatting about trivial things, Mark's work, Beatrice's students, the flowers in the garden. It was normal. It was peaceful. It was what it should have always been. After lunch, Mark and I went out to the porch. We sat in the rocking chairs Frank had built. "Mum, I need to tell you something," Mark finally said. My heart raced for an instant. Mark must have noticed because he quickly added, "It's a good thing? I promise." I breathed a sigh of relief. "Okay, tell me." Mark turned to look at me. "I asked Beatrice to marry me, and she said yes." My first instinct was joy, but immediately came fear, the memories of Chelsea. Mark read my expression. "I know what you're thinking, and I understand. After Chelsea, I was scared too. But Mum, Beatrice is different, completely different." He continued. "She knows everything that happened. I told her about Chelsea, about how I treated you, about the divorce, everything. And she didn't run away. And there's something else. She insisted that we sign a prenuptial agreement. She doesn't want any of my future assets if things don't work out." That surprised me, and it gave me hope. "When is the wedding?" I asked. Mark smiled. "We haven't set a date yet. But before planning anything, I needed your blessing. Beatrice said she wouldn't marry me if you weren't comfortable, that your opinion is important, that family is built on mutual respect." I felt tears pricking my eyes. "You have my blessing," I said in an emotional voice. "Beatrice is a good woman. I can see it." Mark hugged me. Thank you, Mum. That means everything to me. Then he added something else. Mum, about this house. I want you to know that I will never, ever ask you to leave it. This is your house, your home, and it will be until the day you decide otherwise. Beatrice and I are going to build our own life, in our own space. We don't need or want this house. Those words liberated something in me that I hadn't even known I was holding on to. Beatrice came out to the porch. Did you tell her? She asked with a smile. Mark nodded. She walked over and sat on the floor in front of my rocking chair. Mrs. Monica, I know I have big shoes to fill. I want you to know that I deeply respect everything that has happened, and if you ever feel that I am crossing a line, I hope you'll tell me. Directly, without fear. I looked into her eyes. They were sincere, clear. Thank you for saying that, Beatrice. And please, call me Monica. She smiled broadly. Only if you call me daughter when you feel ready. My heart tightened. Daughter. I had had a daughter-in-law who used that title as a weapon. Could I open myself up to having another? I would like that, I finally said. I would like that very much. Daughter. Beatrice got up and hugged me. A genuine hug. No calculations behind it. Mark looked at us with tears in his eyes. His family, fragmented and broken, was finding a way to heal. The following months were filled with wedding preparations. This time, I participated. Beatrice consulted me on every decision, not because she needed my approval, but because she genuinely valued my opinion. The wedding was held in a beautiful garden, small, intimate, only close family and true friends. When Mark and Beatrice exchanged vows, I cried, but they were different tears than the ones I had shed 2 years earlier. At the reception, Ethan sat next to me. How do you feel? He asked. I thought about his question. At peace, I finally replied. For the first time in a long time, I feel peace. Ethan smiled and raised his glass. To peace, to healing, to endings that are really new beginnings. We toasted. Around us, people were laughing, dancing, celebrating. And I was there, part of it, no longer invisible, no longer displaced. That night, back at my house, I sat in the living room. The house was silent, but it didn't feel empty. It felt full, full of good and bad memories, full of lessons learned, full of second chances. I looked at Frank's photo on the mantelpiece. We did it, I said out loud. I protected what we built. I protected our son even when it meant letting him go. And now I think we're going to be okay. I stood up and walked through the house. Every room held a story. The kitchen, where Chelsea and I had had our final confrontation. The living room where I had been humiliated in front of everyone. But also, the table where Mark and I had begun to rebuild our relationship. The porch where I had received his request for a blessing. The garden where Frank's roses bloomed every year without fail. This house had witnessed my worst moment, but also my greatest strength. Here I had learned that protecting myself wasn't selfishness, that setting boundaries wasn't cruelty, that sometimes the greatest love you can give is refusing to be destroyed. Because only by remaining whole can you be there when the people you love finally wake up, when they finally choose to be better. I went up to my room. I looked at myself in the mirror. 72 years old, lines on my face that told stories, eyes that had seen pain, but also redemption. You survived, I told myself. More than that. You won. Not with vengeance, not with hatred, but by remaining true to who you are. I lay down in my bed, in my house, in my refuge that no one had been able to take from me. Sometimes protecting the past is saving the future. Frank knew it when he wrote that clause in his will. He knew I would need protection, and he gave me the tools to defend myself even after his death. Thanks to that, I was able to stand firm. I was able to say no. I was able to demand respect in my own home. And eventually, that firmness saved not only my home, but also my son. I closed my eyes, feeling gratitude. Gratitude for having survived, for having healed, for having a second chance with Mark, for meeting Beatrice, for having Ethan as unconditional support. Life had hit me hard. It had shown me the dark side of the people I loved, but it had also shown me my own strength, a strength I didn't know I had until I desperately needed it. Have you had to let go of someone you loved to save yourself? Have you discovered a strength within you that you didn't know existed? Tell me your story in the comments, because we all have battles, we all have scars, but we also all have the capacity to heal, to rebuild, to choose peace over resentment. This house is still mine. These keys that Chelsea coveted so much are still in my possession, not because they represent money or status, but because they represent something much more valuable. My autonomy, my right to exist in my own space without asking permission, my freedom to live without fear, and that no one can ever take from me. So if you are going through something similar, if someone is trying to take what is yours, if you feel invisible in your own life, listen to me. Resist, stand firm, seek help, trust your instinct. And above all, remember that protecting yourself is never selfishness. It is survival. It is self-love. It is justice. The truth always comes to light. And those who remain true to themselves, those who refuse to be destroyed, those are the ones who finally find peace.